Hello, Dr. Carter. Once again I've been trying to upload my final presentation and it just has not worked. So I'm trying a completely different thing. I'm actually using my GoPro. So my topic for my final project is once again the prominent black authors from the 20th century. So I could have done the 21st century as well, but it just would have dragged on and dragged on. But so I'm gonna start it off with someone that we've all known, and it's been a very prominent. He's been a very prominent author, with not only within the African American community, but just the author community as a whole. And that has to be Langston Hughes. Langston Hughes was an American poet, novelist, and playwright. So he went over all of them. He was extremely big during the Harlem Renaissance, and that's kind of when the playwright really took off, and a lot of the work he did kind of really first kind of took off. But the poems I've never really been big into, but I've always learned a lot about Langston Hughes, and I've always really liked his work. I thought it was interesting from the very start, so it always was extremely gripping. It was very powerful, basically what I took out of it. So then the second person I've chosen was Richard Wright. Richard Wright was a very controversial author for the 20th century, and I think that's partially why I chose him. Being controversial is not always a bad thing. It can be a good thing, and it can play into your help, and basically be a bonus for you. So some of the one in particular that he wrote that was considered to be a controversial novel was The Native Son. So he was not only the funny part within this, though, is that yes, he was a controversial author, but he was also a best-selling author. And that kind of, it kind of goes over all the perspectives here. But, Wright was really the first person to kind of call out the racist society that we lived in, and unfortunately, we still, if you're gonna be naive to not think that today. But, so I think that's why I chose him. Is because yes, he was a extremely good author, but he also really within his works called out some very big topics within our country as a whole. And the next person is one that we've actually gone over within our class. We've gone over before numerous times, is Zoriel Neale Hurston. I chose Hurston because I really liked her work. I thought, like with basically everyone that we've gone over this semester, the detail within Hurston's work really caught me. I've never been one to really, sit down and read a book and enjoy it. That's just never really had the patience for it. I'm a patient person, but just sitting down and reading, a 200+ page book has never been something that I would consider fun. But the way that a lot of the writers that we went over in this class, and specifically Hurston, kind of caught my attention. There's a hook from the beginning of all her novels. As an example would be The Eyes Are Watching God. But I think that's when it kind of grabs me. I'll tend to get bored when I'm reading, but when you kind of grab the reader from the beginning, I think it really helps. But then the real key for me was being able to get through that book was the amount of detail that Hurston writes within. So what I mean by that is that she's able to really almost paint a picture in my head of what's going on. So when I can almost visualize it, for me for me the visual learning is better. But when I'm able to visualize something that the author is talking about, I get more interested in it, and then I found myself, instead of like I normally would with a book where it's I finally finished the chapter, I can put the book down, I was more interested in continuing to the next chapter. And I think that was the main reason why I chose her in particular. Was because of that, and just the amount of detail and how, yes, she was, she's award-winning, she's extremely good, but that's when you have an impact. When I'm able to get through a book without any problems at all, and I enjoy it, that's definitely the reason why I chose her. The next one would be Frederick Douglass. We all know who Frederick Douglass is. The specific works that on him, so there are autobiographies about his life as a slave and his life as an escaping slave and everything that went over that, was extremely interesting. We haven't really had a lot from a true first-hand perspective on this in our country in novels. So that was kind of really interesting for me because it's not like other themes or perspectives or stories and ideas that have been gone over and gone over and gone over hundreds of times. This was new and it was interesting, and I haven't really read anything like it, so I think that's why I was really excited to go over it. Um, and then not only was Douglas an extremely good author, in my opinion, but we all know him as a public speaker, fighting for, rights for the African American community and all this stuff. And I think that's another reason why I chose him, is because not only was he a massively effective author, but he was big within the African American community as a whole. So, but yeah, no, that his autobiographies were really, really interesting to me, and I think that's just the main reason why I chose him, is because when you don't have a topic, when you have a new topic, I should say, that hasn't been hit from every angle, I think it can really be successful, and I think this is one reason that made him a successful author. Was he had these personal experiences to draw off of. He wasn't bullshitting or anything. Everything was from him, and I think that's what made it really interesting. The next author we also went over throughout our class was W.E.B. Du Bois. I can never say that right. A lot of people don't know, but Du Bois was actually the first person, or African American, to get a doctorate from Harvard. We went over Du Bois a lot in this class, but I really liked, the works we've gone over about him. And then, kind of like Douglas, I chose him not only because he's a prominent author, but the stuff he did within the community. So, when you can cover both grounds, I really, really liked it, and so I think that's a partial reason why, I chose Du Bois. The next one was James Baldwin. I've actually read stuff from other classes for Baldwin. He was not only an author, but he was a poet. He did essays. He basically hit every angle you could. He was big within the 20th century. He was big within the 20th century, for going over in topics that were a little bit, iffy at the time, where you had, racial topics between African Americans and others. You had the sexual topics between men and women, and then you had, class topics where you talked about, and you had distinctions between class levels within families for money-wise. And so that's, an interesting side to it, too. So, the one thing I really think as all of the authors that I have chosen have in common were that they really, hit angles that I hadn't really read a lot before, but the hook was there at the beginning. So there they gained my interest in whatever they were writing, whether it was an essay, whether it was a novel, whether it was a poem, or whatever. You gained my attention from the beginning. And for people like me, who aren't big into reading, when they're able to do that and I'm able to visualize it, I really have a much better experience reading it, and that's kind of why I chose the people that I did. I could have gone and made a list of 25, 30, and then if you included the 21st century, it would have gone bigger. But the people that I chose for the 20th century, for African American perspective, I think are some of the best that you could choose, and that's why I chose them. Thank you, Dr. C, and I appreciate it.